The Madison is a team event. Each team is made up of 2 riders. The riders propel each other forward as they meet between laps. Teams sprint every 10 laps to accumulate points according to the following structure. 5 points to the first team, 3 points to the second team, 2 points to the third team, and 1 point to the fourth team. Points awarded in the last sprint after the full distance will be doubled. In addition to the sprints, teams can earn 20 points for lapping the field and joining the back of the main bunch of riders. Final standings are decided by points. The winner is the team with the most points at the end of the race. If there is a draw on points, the places in the final sprint shall decide the winner.
So there you go, just another reminder for you about the complications that make up the Madison race. The history of this one, it was a race that was first devised at Madison Square Garden in New York, hence the name of the race. The French call it l'Américain for a similar reason, and it's one of the mainstays of the 6-day racing circuit, of course, that take place on the boards of velodromes all across Europe during the winter months. And it is also, of course, a world championship discipline as well for both men and women. The men's Madison will come up a little bit later, but for now our focus is on the women's race. And the riders who came out on the track a little bit earlier, then had an enforced break, are back now, ready for the start of 100 laps, 20 kilometres of racing, 10 sprints. So sprints used to be every 20 laps in the Madison, but now they're every 10. So as we were saying a few moments ago, it's much more frenetic action right from the get-go, because you're just 10 laps away at any point from a sprint, and all the points add up to the end of the race for both sprints and lap gains. 20 points for a lap gain, as you saw in our quick guide, and the sprints 5 for the win, 3 for second, 2 for third, 1 for fourth is the way that one plays out. So the whistle gets the riders underway, so they're all together in one group when they come to the home straight next time. The gun will fire, and after that point the riders in the back straight, well, they can join in the action as well. And then of course the changes begin and the race proper begins. Gun fires, 100 laps of women's Madison action is underway. It is New Zealand currently on the front ahead of Australia, with Italy in third place. And the teammates here, they will look out for their teammate lower down the track. The New Zealanders are the first to make the change and making the hand sling. Gail, that's one of the most complex parts of Madison racing, not only to make sure that you spot where your teammate is, but to make sure you can complete that hand sling. And the reason I said it's complicated is when you get it wrong, that's exactly what happened. You see the Italian team there coming to grief in the opening couple of laps here. The Italians completely flopping on the hand change there, the hand sling, and both riders ending up on the track. So we hope that they're okay, but there, unfortunately, Gail, was a graphic illustration of what happens when you get it wrong.
Yeah, it's exactly that. It's really a very technical discipline, and you saw directly at the start the New Zealand and the Australian riders starting very fast, just to take safety and not having to stay in the middle of the traffic. You see very big differences of technique between the riders, and yeah, being physically strong is 1 point, but I think the technique in the Madison is even more important, and that will make definitely the difference between the races and on this podium spot.
Of course, the Italians were last year's champions. The other half of the Italian team is back in action, and as long as her teammate is off the track, she has to continue alone, so no handslings for her. And the rider who is back in the action, the red number, is Gloria Scarsi, and it's Vittoria Gorzini, the rider who was the winner of the Omnium team pursuit and the individual pursuit, now also returning to the track as well. And she actually came to grief in the elimination race during the Omnium competition a couple of days ago as well. She crashed, but despite that, she actually won the elimination race she crashed in, and of course the Omnium overall. So made of stern stuff, our cyclists here, but an early shock for the Italians. And as we are about 2 laps away now, just exactly 2 laps away from the first sprint, and just looking down at the action, and the Italians getting back into the bunch here at the bottom of the track. The bell, and 1 lap to go to the sprint, and it is the race on the front here for 5 points. Let's see who's going to pick up the 5-point score this time on the front of the main field. And it is France from Australia who take the points in the first passing of the finish line there. We'll wait for confirmation of that sprint result to come up on our screens for you, to tell you who's third and fourth as well. 90 laps of racing to go. Good change there from the Polish team as they launched themselves into the action once again. Great Britain represented in this race also by Fifer Georgian and Anna Doherty. They're actually the British Junior Madison champions, taking that title just a few short weeks ago. So it was France, Australia, Great Britain and Canada for the points in the opening sprint. So that gives France 5, Australia 3, Great Britain 2 and Canada 1 point. The rider who is in the action currently here for Great Britain is Fifer Georgie. The one rider has a black number, one has a red number. That's how we tell them apart. Ahead of the race, France and Australia currently just going into the back straight. Of course, if a team loses a lap during the course of the Madison, they take 20 points away from the total. And with teams only having 5 points maximum currently, losing a lap in the early stages will see you go into a deficit situation with minus points on the board. It's a good battle here from Great Britain to try and make sure that they can secure more points in the next sprint. We're 5 laps away from that. The head of the race now is in the home straight. So Australia and France and Colombia at the moment, Gail, seem to have the best of the action at the front of the race.
Colombia is actually losing the lap.
Okay.
So they were just caught by the French and the Australian riders. We see the two riders really strong. And yeah, already a half lap, almost the lap one for the two nations.
Thank you, Joe. I'm glad you're keeping your eye on the action. I was busy looking at the scoreboard though. Look up and see a Colombian rider. Of course, she is just about to lose a lap along with her teammate, but it's Australia and France who are at the head of the race. They shared maximum points in that first sprint.
And you see right now the Australian rider staying behind the Colombian, now staying in the French wheel, and now she lost the France riders, and the France is going to take the lap alone.
Absolutely, the French already got a great opportunity there to head towards a sprint victory and a potential lap gain as well for the French if they can make contact with the largest group on the track. It's often difficult to judge what that is now at this point in the Madison because there are teams literally spread all the way around the track here. So we're reliant upon our starter to point out the head of the race. That is the French team. The Australians, as Gail observed, losing a little bit of ground there. They were trapped behind the Colombians who were in the process of losing the lap, and so they allowed that gap to the the French team, I should say, to open. So Australia still in second place, but the action continuing here as our leading rider is here now, approaching some of the back markers on the rear of the track here in the back straight, as they will be passing the poles there, just completing a hand sling as well.
And we see the two Italian riders back in the race and catching the Australian back with the Russians. They're racing really well now.
Yeah, an early shock for the Italians when they found themselves floored in an early crash, but the two very strong riders here, of course, Vittoria Guazzini with already 3 medals to her credit, so they're fighting their way back into the action. But as we look at the current points scoring situation, France, having gained the lap, have 25 points now. They're the only team so far to have gained the lap. Australia with 3 points, and as Gail mentioned, they missed that move when France went away. The Australians, if they'd stayed with them, could well have got the lap gain as well, but they allowed the gap to open. France are the only team so far 1 lap to the good. Australia in second with 6, and Russian Federation in third place with 2 points, along with Great Britain. The only other teams to score so far, Canada and Italy. 72 laps still to go. So once again, the Australians on the charge, and seeing if they too can extract some 20 points from a lap gain here. We're at 1 lap to go to the next sprint. Ahead of the race coming into the finishing straight, it is still France who are leading the charge here. It's looking for the points, and they will go with the Russian Federation.
In front of the Italians.
Again, we wait for confirmation of minor placings. So coming together now of the groups as the Italians back in the action, as we saw, and the French completing another neat hands thing there. They're the only team still with the lap gain. Now Australia have been credited with the lap gain, so France now on 30 points, Australia on 26, so a 4-point difference between France and Australia. The only teams so far to have made the lap gain. New Zealand, meanwhile, have lost a lap. So France, Australia, Russian Federation and Italy was the order on sprint number 2, and by virtue of those lap gains, France and Australia top the leaderboard, 30 for France and 26 for Australia. So the action non-stop in the Madison, as we promised. And the Colombian rider having an interesting race here, just trying to negotiate a way through some of the back markers as the other team making the change there are Canada, as they just come through the finishing straight. 66 laps still to go. And they're 6 away from the next sprint. France once again have come to the front of the action. Great Britain in second place, followed by Australia. Great Britain are currently lying in 5th place with 2 points on the board from the opening sprint. And we're seeing a more select group of riders now here, Gail, at the front of the race. The teams who really are making the running at the top of the leaderboard are all currently together in that group, just going into the back straight.
Yeah, we see big differences here. It's really all the leaders and the favorites in this first group. And that was very close for the 2 Canadian riders.
Yeah, they had a problem changing last time. I can just interject, but to tell you that Russian Federation and Italy now have gained the lap as well. Exactly. So 4 teams now with the lap gain at the top of the leaderboard. Point situation: 30 for France, 26 for Australia, 22 for Russian Federation, and 21 for Italy, who of course had that crash in the opening couple of laps and are now back and with that lap gain to their credit. 62 to go, 2 away from the next sprint. It is still France and Australia, Great Britain, Poland at the head of the race. And France extracting a little gap here as we head for the next sprint. Australia look set for 2nd place. France just making the hands change just before the sprint line, but such as the gap they had ahead of Australia, they managed to complete the change and still retain the lead position across the line for the sprint points. So 5 for France, 3 for Australia, 2 for Russian Federation, 1 for Italy. And the sprint, in fact, that was a previous sprint, so our system not yet updated, so we're a little bit behind here with our electronic scoreboard in front of us. So just waiting for that to reflect the situation. France, the team who've got the 2 points in that sprint from Poland with 1, Italy got 3, and Russian Federation with 5 points. So that was the outcome of sprint number 3. 57 laps still to go. So the French team extending their advantage. It is now 5 points ahead of Russian Federation. It's worth remembering, Gail, of course, in the final sprint, just like a point race now, there are double points available. That can make all the difference. Yeah,
it's a very important sprint now. You need to keep some focus for this last sprint, because you have 10, 6, 4 and 2 points awarded for this last sprint, and it can make a lot of difference when all the teams are so close.
Yep, so it's just spiced up the goings-on in the Madison even more. That changed the rules in recent years. A little bit of a slowing at the front of the main field. It's been frenetic action right from the get-go here, but riders just taking a little breather there at the top of the track. Those involved in the battle for the top positions. Of course, the top 3 teams at the end of this race will take away the medals. France still have the lead, 32 points. Russian Federation second with 27. Australia third with 26. Italy in 4th place with 24. Those are the only 4 teams so far to have gained the lap. 54 laps to go. The Russian Federation team just being tracked here by the French riders. Great Britain still well positioned here. They're still just languishing outside the top 4. They are yet to gain a lap. They're the best of the rest who haven't gained the lap yet. The only team so far to be a lap down, despite the Colombians almost going into that situation. New Zealand, they're at minus 40 points. They lose their 2nd lap. And France now move further ahead of Australia. 10-point advantage following the most recent sprint. Finally, our computer is updated with the most recent sprint information, so it is a little bit behind. So the current situation, as you can see on the screen now, France with 37, Australia with 27, Russian Federation also on 27, and Italy with 24 points. With still 50 laps to go, half distance scale, but those 4 teams now look as though they're the ones who are contesting this race. Yeah, definitely. I think we see the France really strong. They're really technically, I think, above all the other riders. We see the Australian also very strong, but I think they just missed one relay, and they also missed just straight after the second one, which cost a lot of energy. And now they already have a quarter of lap. They're back from the Russians and the France team. The Italian and Great Britain is coming back, so it's gonna be very dangerous now for the Australian team. They need to make the efforts right now. So I think it was a very fast start of the race, very fast half race, and we saw all the riders needing to breathe a bit, and now it starts again, and we know we're gonna see really who's in for the podium spots. Yeah, well, more teams losing laps there. Mexico and Hong Kong, China also go a lap behind. New Zealand are 2 laps behind now. And it's worth remembering, of course, the French team, we've remarked how strong they are, but last year, Marie Linné was part of the French team who took the bronze medal at the World Championships in Monticello in Italy. So they bring good form into this race, and one half of the duo was a medalist 12 months ago at the World Junior Championships. And they lead at the moment, 42 points now for France. Russian Federation on 30, Australia on 27 and Italy on 24. Still amongst those 4 leading teams, just 1 lap gain so far. The main action in terms of laps recently has been riders and teams losing laps rather than riders gaining laps. So there's been a concentration now in the bunch. Teams have come back together. We had a situation earlier where they were spread all around the track. Now we've got one sizable group here, and now the team of Italy begin to accelerate on the front of that one as well. And of course, I've got the Omnium champion Vittorio Guazzini, who was also the individual pursuit and team pursuit champion. They've recovered completely now from that crash they had in the very early part of the race. We saw them both at the side of the track on the floor. They're quickly back into the action and trying to drag themselves up the standings. They're just outside the medal position at the moment, in 4th place, agonisingly close, just 2 points behind the team of Australia. 1 lap away from the next sprint. Here it comes. Looks like the French once again. All that profit from maximum points here. They overhaul the Colombians. Italy on the wheel, then Russian Federation, Australia and Great Britain. The order as they went through the line that time. 39 laps to go. So good riding here from Great Britain. Remember, they've not yet gained the lap, but they are desperately trying to do so, because that would move them into contention potentially for a medal. There's small gaps between the teams in 3rd and 4th place, Australia and Italy. More sizable the gap to Russian Federation, of course. France, the runaway leaders at the moment, going into that sprint with a 12-point advantage ahead of Russian Federation. So the leading group once again into the finishing straight. Australia on the front this time, with the rider for Australia just looking over their shoulder was Alexandra Martin Waller. She's got the black number, and see on your screen there the rider from Great Britain with the black number is 5 for Georgie. She was a bronze medalist in the European Madison titles last year. So good experience for Pfeiffer of riding Madison. She's a great rider both on road and track. So Great Britain 6 points currently. 47 for France, and Russian Federation on 32. So the wider that gap gets and the fewer sprints there are remaining, the more it's looking as though, barring misfortune, France could well be on the way to a gold medal here. They head the race once again, being chased by Poland. The Australians also amongst them as well. The Australians about to complete the hand sling. How do you set scale the whereabouts of your teammate? Obviously, you're looking around the track, but you need to time your move down to make the hand sling at exactly the right moment, don't you?
Yeah, that's years of trainings. It's true that first you learn to give a good relay, and yeah, the basis of the Madison is really to ensure to be able to give the relay before knowing where you're going to give it. It doesn't really matter if you give a relay in the curve or in the straight, but yeah, when you have some experience and you see the best teams, they will take the riders not in the race will make certain effort, riders at certain space to ensure to give the relay at the best spot on the track to get ready and to have just one or just under a lap of the sprint and make the perfect effort to make the difference with the other sprinters and other riders.
Yeah, of course, there's not such a big difference in speed as well as you're grabbing the hand of the other rider and relaying them. They're going through the 30-lap sprint point now, and remember that lead for France is currently 15 points ahead of Russian Federation, and they are still on the front of the action here, followed by Italy. The rider just behind there from Mexico, and they are already 1 lap in arrears. Not too far away from losing another, I suspect, the Mexican team. They were amongst the leaders as they came through the line. 29 laps to go. Looking for confirmation of the latest sprint of the point standings. We get towards the business end of this Women's Madison race. Just 28 laps remaining. Once again, the pace has slackened a little bit here. And with just those 4 teams with the lead lap, and France with that dominating lead ahead of Russian Federation, Italy and Australia. it really is anyone else's race to try and take the battle, certainly for the second place. The silver medal still very much alive between Russian Federation, Italy and Australia. Just 1 point between Italy and Australia, and just 3 points between Italy and Russian Federation. And it is a testament to how good a ride the Italians are doing as they've come all the way back into this third place potential medal position, despite crashing in the opening laps of the race. So the group are back into the finishing straight. The Russian Federation, Great Britain, France, and the other team just making the relay there were Poland. Marta Jasulska, third in the Omnium Championship, second in the women's scratch race final, and her teammate Victoire Berteau. The Poles currently in 6th place. They are 3 points on the board, so they've not really got the scoring that they need so far to challenge for the medals, and our leading 4 teams are the ones battling for the honours at the end of this race. We have got 24 laps still to go. It is definitely slowed up now. At what point, Gail, does the fatigue begin to be a factor in a race like this? It's all been all-out action right from the start, and those legs do begin to tire towards the end, don't they?
Yeah, it's definitely a big point. As we said earlier, it's very technical discipline. You don't just have to ride, but you need to give relays. And very dangerous move from the French and the Russians. And
yeah,
this is small things that can happen with the fatigue, and it kind of goes to the crash and a medal lost for a team or another. So it's really important to stay very focused. We saw also the Italian just a bit staying at the back of the peloton behind the last teams, which already lost a lap, and now they just are alone at the back with the teams losing the lap. So it's the kind of things that can be really important and can make win or lose a race. You see all the favorites staying together, and the Italian just stayed a bit too far, and now they lost a half lap almost from the other end. Need to make the effort to come back.
Yeah, they lost that ground very quickly indeed. Meanwhile, the most recent sprint number 8 of the 10 in this race, 5 points for France, 3 for Australia, 2 for Russian Federation, 1 for Great Britain. So that further extends the advantage for the French team. It's now an almost unassailable lead, bar one of these other teams making a lap gain. France with 57 points on the board, Russian Federation with 35, Australia just 2 points behind on 33, and Italy a further point behind on 32. But as Gail mentioned a few moments ago, the Italians just lost contact with that leading group, and that could be fatal in these closing stages. We have got 2 sprints remaining, 16 laps of racing to go, the 2 sprints, and of course, as we mentioned a few moments ago, the final sprint counts for double points. It is Russian Federation on the front with France and Great Britain, and the team of Poland behind, Australia there as well. The Italians just completing the change. They are back safely amongst that group of leading teams. The Mexicans being asked to leave the track as they have fallen now 2 laps behind. The New Zealanders have already left the track. Hong Kong, China already 1 lap in arrears as well. Meanwhile, though, at the head of the race, the Russian Federation team complete their next change. They'll be looking forward to the next sprint. It's just 3 laps away, and they are desperately in battle with Australia, just holding on to a 2-point advantage. So the Australians need to be watchful here to make sure that they can take some points in this sprint. It will be vital to the Australians in this battle with the Russian Federation. They're currently just out of contention for the sprint points in a couple of laps' time. The Italians making a move around the outside. France still well established there, and Russian Federation. But here come the Australians around the outside. They've left it late to close the gap, but now up into 4th place in the line. So we come around with 1 lap to go to sprint. The French make the change. Russian Federation on the front, followed then by France and Italy and Australia. Australia looking for that valuable point, but Russian Federation are ahead. If they get the 5 points here, they will move ahead of Australia with 1 sprint to go. As we come to the line, it is Russian Federation, France, Italy and Australia who take that one ahead of Great Britain. So that will change the silver medal standings with 1 sprint to go. The advantage gained by Russian Federation ahead of Australia. So nail-biting moments going on in the last 9 laps of this race. It could all come down to that final sprint for the silver and bronze medal.
Yeah, now you see the French team really is just riding on the defensive. They just need to avoid a lap gain by a team. But for the 3 other spots, it's really close. Everything can change. You see now 6 points ahead from Russia, but with 10 points awarded in the last sprint, everything can change.
Yeah, France have 60 points now and the 20 points advantage. Russian Federation move up to 40 from that last sprint. Australia on 34, tied with Italy. So joint third place for Australia and Italy. That's going to be a real battle between those two teams with just 6 laps to go. Australia are on the front, France second wheel, but then it is Russian Federation and Italy, followed by Great Britain. The riders now, as they go into the back straight with the final few laps of this Madison race to be completed. And France, well, they have dominated the race literally from the opening lap gain that they made. Russian Federation, Australia and Italy also with that lap gain. Too late now, I think, for any more teams to take a lap. The other teams who are battling for the medals will be so watchful now of any potential move, but it is France once again who come to the front. They almost don't need the points in this sprint, but I'm sure they're going to press home the fact that they're on the way to taking a world title here for France. But the Russian Federation team in second place. Australia are losing ground here, and the Italians have moved ahead of Australia. They're locked together at 34 points each. If Italy beat Australia across the line in the final sprint, they will be the bronze medalists. So Australia versus Italy is the real battle going on here. If Australia or Italy can take the win and the 10 points, they can overhaul Russian Federation, but they are at the front of the race just behind France. So here we go. Look at the Italians and the Australian riders. They both complete changes. Australia just ahead of Italy now. It is France in the home straight with a lap to go. Russian Federation second place. Then it's Australia and Italy. They are battling out for that bronze medal position. Over the top they go. Italy get the advantage. Australia make a late change, and they're coming into the finishing straight. It's a victory lap here for France. They are already celebrating victory. Russian Federation will secure second place, but it's ever so close for third between Australia and Italy. I think the Australian just got back by the very narrowest of margins. Certainly the Australian spectators behind us here thought that was the case as well. We'll confirm that for you, but nail-biting conclusion to that one, Gail, literally coming down to the final sprint, and I think the Australians may just have edged Italy in that final run to the line.
Yeah, they just crossed the line in front of the Italy, and even if that wasn't the case, we just saw the Italian riders going out to the sprinter line in the last curve, which could cause a disqualification in the sprint and awarding the point to the Australian riders. But no deal for now. The Australian won the sprint between these two teams, so yeah, definitely the medal for the Australian.
Yeah, we'll just wait for the scoring system here to update in front of us, so we give the absolute confirmation of that result. No doubt, of course, about the winners with 60 points scored during those 100 laps of Madison action. It is the team of France improving on the bronze medal that they took last year at the World Championships, and one half of this combination was involved in that race as well. So it is gold for Victoire Berteau and Marie-Lenée of France. Silver for Russian Federation, Daria Malkova to add to the silver she's taken already in the individual pursuit, and the Omnium at this championship. They're also the silver medalist in the Madison last year for the nation of Russia, although none of these riders are involved in that one. Her teammate Malina Malieva, and confirmed now that it was Australia for the bronze medal. 38 points scored for Australia. It did come down to that final sprint, and they outpaced Italy on the run to the line, and it is bronze for Australia, and celebrations in the Australian camp for Alexandra Martin-Wallace and Alice Culling. You have to feel a little bit for the Italians. Remember, they are the team who crashed very heavily in the opening laps of that Madison, got back into the action, so very close to taking a medal once again for Italy. We've had a great championship so far. They are currently leading the medal table going into this final day of competition with those 4 gold medals already to their credit. But it is France who are celebrating in absolutely fine style over there with both riders receiving the adulation of the French team manager, who barely contained the tears as well. And that was a great race, an action-packed Madison right from the get-go, and really a great example of how to ride the Madison given by the French riders there. That experience, of course, certainly for Marie-Lenée, who was involved in the final last year when they took the bronze medal.
Yeah, exactly, and we see it's a very young discipline for women, which started about 2 years ago, and we see already a very high level of races for these young riders, and it was really nice race, and yeah, we see all the big nations at the front. It's true that you need riders in your country to practice this discipline, but all the other nations are not far back, and it's definitely going to be one of the major disciplines in track cycling for the next years, and it's going to bring a great event in Tokyo in 2 years, I think, with probably a few of these young riders at the start.
Absolutely, we're kind of at the point in the Olympic cycle where the new generation of riders are beginning to come to the fore, and of course these World Junior Championships are absolutely the best showcase for the very best junior racing talent in the world. And certainly the riders we have seen taking medals here during the course of the 5 days of action here at the Junior World Championships, very much on course to further success in the future. So we're going to change event now, back to a timed event, the men's 1 kilometre time trial, and here is our quick guide to the time trial discipline.